Well, you would think, with so much advance warning about Milton coming in, FEMA would be ready. You would be wrong. FEMA's broke, and the federal response to Helene is completely broken too. The destruction caused by that hurricane puts the end to the lie that politics stops at the water's edge. In western North Carolina, the death toll is in the hundreds, and entire communities are still completely devastated or in some cases gone. The area looks like a war zone. And today, on that one-year anniversary of the October 7th attacks, the area looks more like an American version of the Middle East. Democrats refuse to stop politicizing the destruction that they refuse to do anything about. And they're not doing anything constructive in regard to helping the people of North Carolina either, and it says plenty. Democrats have the audacity to say out loud FEMA is bankrupt, that the government has money for Ukraine and Hamas, but nothing for American citizens. It says everything, doesn't it? The Democrats like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Pete Buttigieg have done nothing to improve the situation, says all we need to know. The first priority is not America or the principles of America first, but electing Democrats and giving you the bill for the World Economic Forum agenda. The destruction also puts an end to LaGuardia's comment that there is no Republican or Democratic way to pick up the garbage. That may have been true maybe 80 or 90 years ago when LaGuardia was the mayor of New York City, but today, in cities throughout America, the Democratic way is to not pick up the garbage and then blame the Republicans. Cleanup, emergency supplies, recovery, disaster relief. The way Democrats handle these things is abysmal. To hear Pete Buttigieg, whose entire career is a study in failing upward, talk about these things. To hear him talk about rural communities as if they were alien. To hear little Pete is to hear a Democrat who is totally out of his depth. So much so that he would be underwater like, well, much of western North Carolina during the storm, if he were not posturing on dry land. Kamala Harris says she and Joe Biden have been paying close attention to what's happening in North Carolina. Does she mean she's been paying close attention to the political fallout because of her incompetence? And that incompetence may result in her losing the state by a bigger margin? Does she believe the people of North Carolina believe her, that they trust her to do the right thing? Does she believe her fellow Democrats believe her? Or is this one of those rare issues where Democrats and Republicans believe the same thing? Namely, that Harris has nothing relevant to say or offer. And while those in North Carolina plead for help, Kamala Harris was not figuring out how to deliver relief. No, she was interested in very different things. It's perfectly obvious that some Democrats just don't care about rural and middle America. And to hear Democrat operative David Axelrod tell it, the devastation is a win for Democrats. He says Trump voters who have lost their homes are less likely to make it to the polls. No, he said this in comparison to the residents of what he calls the blue dot, that is Asheville, North Carolina. You see, Axelrod says they're more sophisticated, more upscale, the voters of Asheville, and they'll find a way to vote when those mountain folk, those rednecks, those knuckle draggers just won't figure it out. Axelrod sounds more like his fellow Obama maniac, Rahm Emanuel, who said, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. As Emanuel was also mayor of Chicago, the statement speaks for how Democrats govern. They cannot help but misgovern. As Axelrod speaks in a similar style, the takeaway is that Democrats do not care what happens to Republicans. In a word, Democrats like Axelrod and Buttigieg and Biden and Harris, they hate Republicans, and honestly, they hate a lot of Americans, middle Americans, anybody who does not subscribe to their point of view. Democrats deplore us. They do. Put another way, Democrats want to do to western North Carolina what they say Republicans want to do to federal lands in the West. Exploit it to the hilt. Forget fracking or drilling. Democrats want to convert a disaster of epic biblical proportions into a source of political energy. It really is shameful. It's awful. In fact, Democrats want to harvest voters. Maybe a lot more. No doubt Axelrod believes what he says. Too bad he refuses to let the truth intrude upon his stereotype about Donald Trump and his voters. Too bad he refuses to listen to what people on the ground in North Carolina have to say. As Volunteer explains, First responders need internet, gasoline, non-perishable food, personal hygiene products, and, well, anything that will help them, maybe boost morale. First responders need what the government has failed to deliver: assistance. Assistance. First responders need what no one in this government can deliver: leadership. What no one wants or needs is a partisan hack who only cares about boosting morale, and only among registered Democrats. Listen to this.
It's real life. It's bad.
Everything's changing day by day, hour by hour, right? So there might be a need now. What's the big need that you're hearing about people needing right now?
The biggest thing that people tell me is internet. Like, if you have a mobile Starlink, or you can disconnect your Starlink and just set it up someplace and put a sign at the side of the road, that's what people need. And so communication is the big one. And just stay out of first responders' ways. Gasoline, top foods, like, don't bring cans that you need a can opener for, because the can opener's gone. Personal hygiene items, all that stuff's going to be useful. And honestly, just things that are going to boost morale.
You know, I would suggest the number one thing that these folks need is leadership. Now, there's been plenty at the local level, friends and neighbors helping each other, the local county sheriffs pitching in and telling FEMA, if you get in our way again, we'll have you arrested. You see, FEMA keeps blocking supply lines. It's inexplicable. When did neighbors helping neighbors become a problem in America? Never in my lifetime. You see, no one wants or needs to hear Democrats lie that FEMA needs more money. That's not the problem. J.D. Vance is right that it is disgraceful for FEMA to spend billions on illegal aliens and nothing on American citizens. Is he wrong to believe that the government should do for devastated communities what residents cannot do for themselves? Are we wrong to believe that this is the least the government should do for the people? Well, you know, the people that have paid all that money in by way of taxes. If we're having a government by the people, it has to be for the people. Is it wrong to believe that the government owes the American people more than it gives all other people who have no right to be here in the first place? Does J.D. Vance ask too much? Is he wrong to demand that FEMA do its job? No, of course not. Here he is.
The idea that FEMA is running out of money is something that the leadership of the Harris administration has said. That especially if there's another disaster, they've said that they might have to go back to the well. And I think a lot of Americans are saying, well, how can we afford to give billions of dollars to illegal immigrants in this country, but we've got to go back to the well to provide disaster relief for our own citizens? That's a disgrace.
So's the $750 offered to people that lost everything. Their homes are gone. In some cases, in places like Castle Rock, their town is gone. There's no grocery store, no hardware store, no gasoline station. President Trump is also right when he says this is the worst response in the history of hurricanes. He's right. He's right to say the federal government has betrayed the American people. He is right to say Harris's response, or rather her failure to respond, is worse than George W. Bush's during Katrina. Trump does not mention Bush by name, but the implication is clear. That it takes a lot to fail this miserably. Here he is.
Think of it. People are dying in North Carolina. They're dying all over those 5, 6 states. They're dying, and they're getting no help from our federal government because they have no money, because their money's been spent on people that should not be in our country. This is the worst response in the history of hurricanes. A certain president, I will not name him, destroyed his reputation with Katrina, and this is doing even worse. She's doing worse than he did. Vote for Trump, and we will take care of the American people first. We'll take care of everything.
Yeah, take care of the American people first. It takes a lot to believe that Kamala Harris should be in government at all. It takes too much to believe she should, well, she'd be commander-in-chief and in charge of the federal branch, as if the answer to a natural disaster is a man-made catastrophe at the ballot box. The answer to a regional crisis is positive action, not self-destruction by an act of national suicide. The answer to our present crisis lies in putting an end to the lies of Biden and Harris and their reckless administration. Recovery begins with President Trump in the White House. Real relief begins on Election Day. We'll make America great again, but we need you to vote. I've already put my ballot in. Where are you?